Here we are. Hey.
Hello.
Ugh.
Not gonna lie, I just.
You just logged in?
Yeah.
Sweet. Hey.
Hi.
Oof. Oops. Right.
How's everybody doing?
Pretty good. How are you?
Good.
Ugh. I wonder if the professor is going to join us or not.
Did you invite her?
Yeah, she told me to send her an invite.
Mm.
So I don't know if
I'm sure she'll be here. She seems like the type.
I don't know, announcements like crack me up.
I know. Don't get me started. Looks like Tom's trying to join.
Yeah.
The man of the hour.
Maybe he's putting his suit on.
He should wear his old flight suit.
Oh my god, that'd be awesome.
Our team charter says we're supposed to have fun, right?
Yeah.
There we are. 47 years ago.
I can't see you, Tom.
Yeah.
Can you see me? No?
No. I hope he's wearing it. That would be so funny. Nice.
The team charter says we're supposed to have fun.
Oh, I love it.
That's awesome.
That's great.
A while ago.
How come it doesn't have my picture?
It has your picture, just doesn't have the video feed.
Yeah, I wonder why.
Huh.
Messed up your hair, Tom.
Yeah, all four of them.
Let's see. I don't know why. Let me fix that. I thought maybe you had a helmet on because you're falling down.
I did have a helmet on.
I know, because I thought maybe you were falling down and so you were trying to protect your head. Let's see.
Well, our team charter says we're supposed to have fun, and that's what we're going to do.
Yeah, and you're the only team that put that in their team charter. And I think it's
automatic A to me.
Yeah, I think so too.
Right.
Most everybody gets an A in this class.
All right.
Because when I get down towards the end, and I haven't graded things, and I'm panicking, and it's like 2 o'clock in the morning before the grades are due, I start giving people full credit for stuff. So,
You're making me feel pretty good about this class.
yeah, I mean, it's just you do what you can do, but I cannot figure out why I don't have a video because. Oh, I see. I know. I found out why. Because my start video thing is.
There you are.
There you go.
Okay, there I am. Oh, and I have messy hair. Oh, well. It is what it is, right?
That's
How
why
are you all? You all doing okay? It sounds like your team's doing pretty good.
Yeah, I'm doing fine. Can't speak for everybody else.
Yeah. So do you have questions for? Is everybody here? It's just 5 of you or 4 of
We're
you?
missing one. He's not here yet. Brian.
Who is Brian?
Yeah, he should be here though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
When I was I was having a period where I was falling down earlier, like last summer, and so I was, going to the bathroom and I'd fall asleep and fall off the toilet and hit my head. So I bought a helmet I actually went out and got a bike helmet, and I thought, well, this way, if I fall, I won't hurt myself. I couldn't sleep in it. It was like too uncomfortable. So I thought, okay, fine. But I have.
You could have borrowed mine.
Yeah, it looked like yours. It did actually look kind of like that, except yeah, I mean, it was a pretty heavy duty bike helmet.
Get that resolved? That sounds like a problem.
It's called working too many hours and not going to bed.
Yeah.
And yeah, and same thing now. That's why I'm falling down now, because I'm not getting enough sleep. So I'm falling down, and hitting my head, and I went to the ER a couple of days, I guess Saturday night, because I really,
Oh, wow.
yeah, really. And I thought, oh no. And so I thought, well, since I'm here by myself, because my husband works in the valley down in Phoenix most of the time, and so he's not up here, and I'm by myself, I thought, if I'm going to have a concussion or something and pass out, I need to not be here by myself. So I went ahead and went to the ER, and they said, you just hit your head really hard. Try not to do that anymore. I said, okay.
That's advice from a medical professional, huh?
Yeah. I'll try not to do that. But Tom thinks maybe I have something wrong with my inner ear. And that could be. I mean, I am just really feeling kind of off balance. But I think it's just I'm sleep deprived. And because I'm sleeping a couple hours a night. And that's not enough. So the directions for, is it this? Yes, where you're supposed to post stuff for session 5. I reread them because I wrote them the other night. I reread them and I thought, oh my God, you can't follow those at all. And so people are asking me questions about where I was like, of course they are. I read them and I don't understand them and I know what I'm supposed to be doing. And so I'm going to have to rewrite those. And I still have to make the quizzes showing up. And oh well. As long as people are having fun and learning about teams, that's the main point. The rest of the stuff is just, extra stuff that we do. And we have to do it, and you have to get grades and all that crap. But wouldn't it be fun if we could just, not do that? Just learn and not have to worry about the grades. Because they really don't matter in the big picture.
My boys' law school doesn't do grades. They don't have
really?
Yeah, they have no grades. They said the same thing, that they didn't want people to be focused on trying to get an A. They want them to
well, and that's what I get lots of emails from students saying, well, I wonder how many points I'm going to get or something, and it's like, I don't care. I mean, yeah, I understand you do, but we shouldn't. We really should not be that focused. We should be focused on the learning, and most places don't do outcome learning, so. They do grades.
Right.
But where I teach elsewhere is a graduate program, and we're sometimes we have to make decisions on letting students in who have an undergraduate GPA of under 2.5, which is pretty low. But it's like, well, I don't know what they were doing when they were undergraduate. I mean, it could have been years ago, and they had kids or they were partying or whatever. And it's not a good indicator of whether you're going to do well in graduate school, though lots of places use it. And so we do. So if they're under 2.5, we have to actually make a decision as a faculty. And I just got so annoyed this last round. People were saying, we're setting students up for failure if we let them in. And I thought, well, how about maybe we'd be helping them succeed? Why are we going to? And so I wrote this long email back saying, this is the wrong way to think about this. We know, students that get into the program without us making any decision have a 2.5. People that we have to make a decision about could have a 2.49. What's the difference? And so I wrote this long thing saying we need to let people in. And one of my faculty colleagues said, well, I'm sorry I said anything. I guess I'll just won't vote. And I thought, oh, for God's sake. And so I just thought, really? You're an adult in a graduate faculty, you say, I'm going to take my marbles and go home. And so I wrote back and said, oh, for heaven's sakes. So I'm sure she's not pleased, but I'm leaving there. I'm quitting there. So it's like, but for God's sake, well, I shouldn't have said anything. But, okay, babies, let's all be babies now. And just and not have an adult conversation about whether this is a good policy or not. It's just, but that's such as life in the big city, right? Well, you think I should just say, you have any questions, and then leave and not wait for this other person to come? Does he always come?
Yeah, it's odd that he's not here, honestly.
I wonder if
Amy just texted him, so
oh, you did? Okay, good.
everything's okay. He's normally very reliable.
It was Sarah.
Sarah, sorry.
That's okay. Okay, well,
Too, and kind of reiterated, so he might just be.
you're.
Sarah, I think you're muted.
I think you're muted too.
Oh, I'm muted.
I can hear you, Sarah.
Oh, I
You
can
can't?
hear you.
Amy, I can hear you.
I can hear Amy.
Yeah.
Yes,
No, but Sarah.
Sarah's muted.
How am I muted?
We can't hear you, Sarah.
There's on the bottom left-hand corner. There's a button that says.
Yeah, my,
Oh, there it goes.
That worked that time. Now it's working.
Okay, your microphone just needs to be turned up.
okay.
Yeah. So who's gonna host?
So I was gonna host, and then we.
Oh, because I just joined. It's not my meeting, so I don't have to do anything. Okay. Make sure that when you record, can you see everyone all at once?
I have the gallery.
Okay. Okay, great. And can you see their names?
Mhm.
If I like hover when I'm not using my mouse, then it kind of goes away.
It does? Okay. I don't know how you fix that, but I'm not probably going to watch these because there's too many of them. 12 teams, an hour and a half each would be 18 hours of video, and I don't think I could do that.
Yeah.
So I could grade. It's like, no. I watched a few of them when I had 6 teams, and they're very interesting. And I actually might watch this one because I'm interested in what Tom is talking about. But I'm not going to watch the other ones because it's just too much time. I mean, it is just too much time to watch people sitting around talking about teams.
Thanks for the added pressure.
Yeah. Well, I won't be watching it to grade. I'll be watching it just to hear him talk. I have tried to grade from it, and it's really tedious to go through and say, were they paying attention? And that kind of stuff. So hopefully everybody's got, what you're supposed to do. I mean, you all know what you're supposed to do, so I don't really have to monitor everybody. And I don't have children, don't want any, didn't want a bunch of them, and certainly don't want 60 of them. So, so I try and take a more, a more holistic approach. But, and that makes me say, I'm sorry, grades are late. Grades are always late in my class. Grades are late when you took my class before, weren't they, Tom?
Yep.
Yep. They just, yep. They always are.
But they get there. They get there.
Yeah. At the end of before grades are due, I finish. And so I'm never one of the ones late on posting grades. I'm just one of the ones late in giving feedback during the course. And I understand that means well, I don't understand it because people will tell me, I have no idea how I'm doing in your class. And what I say about that is, really? You have no idea how you're doing in my class? Are you paying attention? Are you reading the instructions? Are you doing the assignments? And when they say yes, then I say, well, then you're probably doing fine in my class. I mean, are you planning to get an F? Do you think you might get an F? No. Do you think you're going to get a C? No. Okay, well then, what's the deal? What's the problem? So I think students do know, and they just want to verify that I'm going to give them the grade they think they want. So, and you've seen some of the stuff I graded. Was any of it surprising to you? I mean, did you go, oh, geez, I thought I had an A and she gave me a C? I mean, so did this team figure out stuff about the posting for the summaries? You know what you're supposed to do about that? You're supposed to summarize what your contribution was?
Yes.
Okay.
We didn't know that until after the second one.
Okay. You should have known that because it said it. But my directions are kind of long, and so you can miss pieces. But I don't think it's going to make any difference in anyone's grade because there are extra credit assignments, I believe, like the Zoom meeting that I don't have any of, and there's other things I think. But I'm not worried. And if anybody is going to get a bad grade because of that misunderstanding, I go back and fix it. So just try and not worry too much about that. Other questions? Anybody have other questions?
So for this week, we're gonna do.
I can't, Sarah. We can't hear you. So you know what? In the bottom left-hand corner, there's a thing. There's a microphone picture.
Yeah.
And next to it is a little up arrow. You might want to test your sound, because I wonder if you've selected the wrong.
Can you hear me now?
Better.
We can hear you, but you're soft.
Oh, weird.
And that was a clicking.
Can you
Who
hear
was
me?
that?
That was me. Can you hear me? My
A
audio?
little bit better. Still could be more.
Maybe bring it closer.
Can you turn it up?
It's all the way up.
Oh, it is all the way up. Huh.
Okay.
Well, just talk loud.
You have headphones with like Amy has?
Yeah, let me try that.
That might help.
Oh, yeah, that was better right then. Yeah, she just might not be facing the microphone exactly right or something. So anyway, no other questions or anything? Everybody's good to go? What are you going to do if what's his name doesn't show up, Brian? You got a strategy?
We should be proceeding in about 1 minute.
Okay, if he doesn't show up, what are you going to do? Do you have?
We have his contributions
questions
to the interview here. We can just I'll ask for him or you know.
Okay,
So
make sure you all have a decision, because he's going to want to know what happens to his grade, and unless there's an alternative plan, if somebody doesn't come to the team interview, they get a 0. And so if you don't want him to get a 0, you have to come up with an alternative plan that the team approves, that I can then say, okay. But, if something's happened, maybe he's gotten sick or an emergency or something, you just need to want to say what that plan is so that it's clear to me what I'm supposed to do if he doesn't come, okay?
Yes.
Now we'll try to get to the bottom of it.
Well,
Try to figure out what the reason is he's not here.
Well, that makes a difference, and you have a recording of it, and so
Right. And we have his questions.
We have his questions. Now he doesn't. You don't want to probably give him full credit because he's not there, but you don't want to give him a 0. It's probably what you.
Well, yeah, he definitely contributed to all this. We don't want him to come out empty-handed.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So that's kind of the strategy that I would take, is give him some credit, but Don, unless it's a medical emergency or something like that.
Sure.
But if he watches the video, that should be good enough.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Well, then I will leave because my dog's barking at me to go outside, and I will talk to you all again. Maybe I'll certainly talk to Tom, because next week he'll call me and tell me I didn't have the quizzes ready yet. Counting on him to do that. And again, I hope you all are enjoying the class and learning a bunch about teams. You've got a good group here. So thank you for your hard work in the class. It does matter that you're doing what you need to do. So take care and good luck.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Bye.
You're welcome.
Okay, should we start with the introduction?
Yeah. Is my audio still screwy?
It's soft, but we can hear you. I can hear you.
Okay, I'll just talk really loud.
Oh, that'll be fun.
Okay. So yeah, why don't you do the background in the introduction stuff, Tom, to kind of give us.
I will do that. For the introduction, what I was going to do is use my questions that I submitted, because they'll pretty much outline our whole interview. And what I want to do is I want to stay focused on what that team looks like. And so if I track, somebody put me back on track, okay?
Okay.
The first question that I put is, who were the team members and what was their educational background? The team members were, and this went across the board. We had 25 aircraft. We had 50 pilots. We had hundreds of medics. And the background for almost everybody was some college, but no college graduates. We were all high school graduates to 1 or 2 or 3 years of college. Average age was about 21. Both pilots went to the Army Flight School and then medical school. Went to many mechanical schools and aircraft schools, and the medic went to Army medical schools. So that pretty much fleshes out the background of everybody. There were a bunch of kids with some training. And the primary duty of the team member depended on what his name was, if you will. We had AC, which was the aircraft commander, and that person on the team was responsible for everything. They made all the decisions. What they said was what was going to happen. We had his decisions were a lot of times navigation, the radio, the communications, training the pilot and command, very often training the crew chief and the medic in the procedures of flying and what we did when we were going in or coming out of a mission. But his main job was to learn from the aircraft commander, so that because soon he would be an aircraft commander, how the progression went. The crew chief was responsible for the aircraft, number one, and also his secondary responsibility was for the medical duties. The medic was responsible for all medical treatment, anybody on board. He was also responsible for the maintenance of the helicopter. So those two people worked in tandem, and the two pilots worked in tandem. What did the team discuss? Where did the team discuss the mission and discuss treatment and where the patient was to go? The mission is when we, on the way to the location of the mission, is where we actually discuss what was going to go on. Some missions, there was no contact or no contact in the area, so we expected just a routine mission where we would fly in, pick somebody up, and come out. Those were always the ones that we were most nervous about, because they would tell you, for example, that there were 4 gunshot wounds that we had to pick up on the ground, and they would tell you negative enemy contact. And we would always ask, okay, how'd they get shot?
That's scary.
It is scary. But we would discuss the mission on the way. Most of the missions that I flew were to the ground pickups. Some of them were hoists, and I'll talk about those later on. A hoist mission was one where every part of the crew was absolutely engaged in making sure the helicopter was directly over where we were trying to extract the person. The treatment of the patient was up to the medic. In other words, once we picked up these people, they were all on the floor of the helicopter in the back. The medic and the crew chief were doing emergency treatment as best they could, which was usually making sure they were breathing and the bleeding was stopped. That was crew chief and medic, both doing exactly the same thing. Once they were kind of stabilized, then the medic would tell us we had head wounds and they would go a particular place, or we had body wounds, they would go a particular place. Burns went to another place. So the medic was actually responsible after we got out of the place to tell us, the pilots, what we had on board. We would then call part of the medical control group that was controlling that area, and they would tell us which hospitals were ready for us when we came in. Let's see. We also, the medic would also determine whether the patient was routine, priority, or urgent. All urgent patients were flown directly to wherever they were supposed to go. If a patient was priority or routine, very often we would pick up more patients and just keep picking them up until we had somebody urgent or we were full. And anybody who have any questions, just feel free to interrupt. How did each participate in discussions about the mission, the helicopter, the enemy, patients, and safety? Each crew member, each team member, if you will, had their own specialty. And so regardless of who was doing what, when the medic spoke about the patient's condition, everybody listened. When the crew chief said that the helicopter shouldn't be flying, we didn't fly the helicopter. Well, when the pilot said, we're going into this area, everybody helped. So for example, when we would go into an area that had been bombed or rocketed and things, a lot of times the ground was very uneven. When the pilot was coming in to land, everybody was watching the ground for stumps and rocks and all kinds of things so that we could actually get the helicopter down low enough to get the patients on board. So each member had their specialty, and then each team member did their job. When was a time when each crew member participated in actions for the mission success? A hoist mission was the most serious and the most dangerous mission that medical evacuation did in Vietnam. Every team member, all 4 team members, were totally responsible for helping the pilot keep the helicopter over the area, and then a hoist would be dropped down through the jungle. People on the ground would put the patient on that hoist, then it would come back up to the helicopter. So when the pilot had it, the pilot in command would say, I'm flying the aircraft, but he would then tell the first pilot, get on the controls with me. That was done so that if one pilot was shot, the helicopter didn't crash in the tree. The crew chief and the medic could see out the back. The pilot could not. The pilot was staring straight ahead, trying to keep the helicopter perfectly still, maybe at 25 to 50 feet in the air. Each crew member would say, watch the tail, the trees to the left or the trees to the right, because we would try to get as low as we could. Hey, Brian's coming.
Hey guys, sorry about that. I was just got done working 6 a.m. to 1 p.m. and forgot that this was at 2 and not at 6.
No problem. We don't have your, I don't have your video though.
Let's see.
I think lower left. Start video. There you go.
Okay, got it.
We're on.
Sweet. So Tom's
You'll have to go.
the intro,
Go
right?
ahead.
Okay, what have I missed?
Tom's just going through the intro right now.
Okay.
And I'm on actually my 5th question. That one was a time when each crew member participated in the actions for the mission success. All of the members, all of the team members, if you will, were always instrumental to the very simple. Go out, pick up the wounded, get them back to the hospitals alive. That was the mission. The crew chief and the medic and the pilot in command all had their specialties or their experience. The pilot in command had no more specialty than the other pilot, had more experience in Vietnam than the other pilot. And as I was saying, when we did a hoist, that was the most critical, because you were trying to get down as low as possible to the trees so that you weren't exposed to enemy fire. If you were up higher, they could see you easy. When you got down close to the trees, helicopters don't do well when they hit something. So the tail of the aircraft was very, very important. And the crew chief and the medic would use the tail of the aircraft as well as lower down the hoist. That was really kind of the most serious and the most dangerous mission that we did was hoist. I didn't do that many of them. I flew nights instead. The reason it ever worked. Patient pickup, gunship coordination. If you got to see that TED talk that I sent out, you can tell when how many people were involved in this single pickup. It seemed like it was the team of 4. There were actually gunships in the area. There's artillery in the area. There are people on the ground. There are the people at the hospital, and then the people controlling the whole operation. They're all part of the team. Our job was just to get them into the ship, get them to the hospital. Any questions?
I think just the ones we have written will. I mean, as far as I can only speak for myself, but.
Yep. Sarah, we had Brian next.
Yep. Did we ever decide on a moderator, or do we need a moderator? Do we want to just go one at a time?
I think we were just going to kind of go through and each person read their own section.
That's kind of what I thought. So, Tom, thank you for letting us interview you.
Absolutely.
So how did you get into your first leadership role?
In Vietnam, when you arrived, you were the newest guy in the team. Vietnam was a very different war in that everybody went over there as individuals and came back as individuals. You didn't go as a unit. So you would land, you would come into Vietnam, you'd land, you'd be assigned to a medical evacuation unit. You would go there, and at that time, you were the 50th pilot out of 50 people. As time went on, people would go home and you'd move up in rank, and eventually you would be put in for what they called aircraft commander orders. A lot of that had to do with experience. It had to do with how many different pilots you were able to fly with. It had to do with how good you were, but it also had to do with how fast other people were going. So the leadership position just came mainly through just being there and being experienced.
Okay. Just a follow-up question. How long did it take from when you got there to when you were promoted to that position?
In my case, 4 months. Pretty quick. A lot of pilots went home early when I got there.
Next up, I believe, should be Sean.
Okay, we're gonna do one and then one and then one. I got you. All right. Also, Tom, thank you for doing this for us. Appreciate your hard work in the class and also your service. How often did the crews train together?
And actually, the answer to that question is never. Everything was on the job training. So when you got there, if you were a pilot, a crew chief, or a medic, the crew chiefs, generally speaking, went into maintenance first and then got a ship to take care of. The medics very often were in the field first and then were assigned to medical evacuation units. But from the time you got on that helicopter, it didn't matter whether this was your first mission or your 500th mission, you were on the job training.
You just relied on their previous training and hoped that they had the right stuff?
And the crew that was there. So in other words, your aircraft commander was always there 3 or 4 months. Your chief was always there 3 or 4 months. Your medic sometimes was brand new. Your pilot was most often brand new because it was our job to train the next guys because they were going to be there when we left.
Wow.
So always on the job training. That's a great question. But every mission was a training mission. And a lot of times the pilots or the pilots in command would learn these hoist missions, would learn from the crew chiefs and medics tricks that they had seen other pilots do that prevented you from getting too low or too high.
Yeah. Were there any ever, I don't know if I'm getting ahead of myself here, but ever any pilots that were not open to listening to like a crew chief or like, I got this figured out, or, you know, ego or being cocky and not wanting to really listen to some guy in the back telling them how to do something?
Well, the pilots all thought they were God.
Right.
They just did. So they didn't listen that much to the crew chief or the medic.
Yeah.
Usually the pilot in command, the aircraft commander, he listened to everybody because he was scared to death because it was all his decisions.
Sure.
So usually they listened to the back, where a lot of the pilots said, you know,
Yeah.
Flying it was 1/3 of the battle.
Mm-hmm.
Good follow-up.
All right, Amy, you're up.
Okay, so describe a time you have had to go above and beyond your assigned duty.
And that's our assigned duty was to go in, pick up wounded, and take them out. So everything that we did was part of our assigned duty. Now, there was a lot of times when you would do things that most people would find crazy unless they were in that situation. So, for example, when we would go in, a lot of times we would be, we flew at about 1,500 feet. What we would do then is we would dive to the ground, get down very low, and come in to pick up the wounded, stop quickly, drop to the ground, throw the bodies on board, turn around, and go back out the same way. And you go very low until you got a lot of airspeed, climb as high as you could, as fast as you could. Because when you were around 200-300 feet above and going slow, you were a big target. I would say over and above, I'd say every person, every crew there, every team member there knew that they could not, that we were going in. But a lot of times when we were first going in, we would draw energy. We would turn around, go out, climb up, turn around, and come back the other area. Come on, back the other way. So if the fire was from the south, we'd come from the north. Sometimes your helicopter would take hits, you'd go back in anyway. I saw medics do things that were way over and above, and I've got that written down, and I'll send all of that out. But just as an example, the rule of the company was you never became, no team member ever became disconnected from the aircraft. We were all wearing those helmets that you saw earlier. We all were connected in the radio. And when it was a dangerous mission, everybody could talk at the same time. It was an open mic. One time we went in, and the crew chief and the medic couldn't reach the people on the ground. They just disconnected, jumped to the ground, picked up the people, put them in the helicopter, and then helped each other get back. So I guess that would be way over and above. And they did that a lot. They did a lot of stuff. As a pilot or aircraft commander, the only thing that we ever did was just sit there and take fire until everybody got on board and then took off. All part of the assigned mission. Good question. Thank you.
All right. So Tom, thank you for stepping up and being our interviewee. Were there ever issues of hierarchy within the team, specifically if an individual was more senior in the civilian world? So be it with age or like work experience?
There was never an issue in the military. You know, in the military, if you were on board the aircraft, regardless of your rank or seniority, if you were designated the aircraft commander, you made all the decisions. So sometimes we would have lieutenants, captains, majors fly with us so that they could get their flight hours in, but they were never in command of the aircraft. The aircraft commander was. I'm sure if they wanted to do something, we'd give them every opportunity to try to do it. But if it's dangerous, they wouldn't do it. In civilians, I'm not sure what that means, but there was always one person. Now, if you disagreed with what that one person did, so if an aircraft commander did things that were extremely dangerous to the team, then any member of the team could write them up and give it to the company commander, and then they would have a kind of a jury of one that decided whether you should keep your aircraft commander license or not. And we had people that were doing, and they would take their aircraft orders. Does that answer your question, though?
Sort of. I think I was thinking my Tom is a veteran and now he's a civilian. And so there are people that he interacts with that he was a lieutenant when he left. And there are people that he interacts with that, like at the law firm where he works, that are more senior at the law firm, but were a lower rank in the military. And so I was wondering if they were still active duty, if you ever had that issue of someone that outside of the military, they were, in a leadership role and then had trouble transitioning to being sort of like a follower and not getting to be that that deciding voice.
I understand the question. I've never had it come up in my experience. What I have done, I've gone to reunions
Mhm.
where the lowest ranking private, who was a medic, and the highest ranking pilot, who was a major, and we're all the same now.
Okay. All
I'm
right.
just younger than most of them.
All right, so back up to you, Brian.
Okay. Number 2. Tell us about a time when you struggled in your leadership role.
In the leadership role in the helicopter, all of the leadership struggles were internal. You never let the crew or the pilot know that you didn't know what you were going to do. But very often you didn't know what you were going to do. So you struggled at nighttime when you had to fly in and pick people up and just land to a dark black field. When you were taking fire, you struggled as to whether you were going to continue to go in or whether you wanted to break off and turn around and come in from the other direction. There were a lot of those kinds of struggles, but never outward. You also, though, sometimes solicited opinions of the crew. What do you think the best way is? Like if a crew chief had been flying, crew chief and medic had been flying together, and they had gone into an area many, many times, and it was your first time or one of the first times you'd ask them for their opinions, but you always made the decision. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think that's a sufficient struggle in your leadership role.
You used the team for those decisions a lot of times, but it was never a vote.
All right, Sean.
Okay, Tom, you've already addressed this question, but I'm going to ask it again anyway if there's something you'd like to add. Were your crews consistent, or did you have constantly changing members? We've already established that you did. If so, how did you ensure that everyone was trained to the same standard?
Okay. And what we did is we would have a team that was assigned to us and a helicopter that was assigned to us. And we would take the helicopter and the 3 team members and we would go out into what we call the field. We would go out of the company area, which was a fairly big, sophisticated area, into an outpost. Sometimes we lived in bunkers, sometimes tents. You'd have that same team for 4 full days. They would fly with you. They would do everything with you. Eat, sleep, fly, clean the helicopter, do everything that was needed as a team. Very often you had a pilot that had no experience. So even the crew chief and the medic would laugh at some of the things that they said. Mm-hmm. You always had an experienced crew chief, and most of the time you had an experienced medic. But a lot of times you had to teach them. A lot of times it was the aircraft commander and the crew chief who were trying to train people on how to do things. Most serious training, you'd get it all done. You'd have a really good crew. Everybody knew what everybody else was going to do. You'd go back to the company. You get the aircraft commander would get a whole new crew and a whole new aircraft. So that's just how it went in Vietnam. And that was really good. Sarah asked a question that I'll answer later. That was really, really good for the company and for the experience and for training. But it was sad because you just get people that you really knew how to work with, working with somebody else. Good question.
All right. Amy?
Well, this question, and I think most of the other questions are in regards to you building your business. So what advice would you give for someone who is interested in a leadership role?
Okay. What advice would I give for someone who's interested in a leadership role?
Yes.
Okay. Excellent training. Train as best you can, read, work with people, but do everything that you possibly can to get the best education, formal education, whatever that happens to be. Then build a good team. Always listen. always try to improve when you that whole team situation. When I started my business, and my business was myself and 4 staff people, what we would do is constantly go to schools. We still go to schools. I'm leaving tomorrow for Nashville for a school. And just keep getting educated, keep trying to get better and better and better. And then as far as the leadership thing, when you make up your mind, don't, let history record whether you were right or wrong. But just once you're in that leadership role, once you've decided what you want to do, don't hesitate, just do it. Right, wrong, or indifferent. That's what I think. I put lead. Find something. Oh, and then as far as you want to be a really good leader, find something you love to do, get very good at it, and do a lot of it.
That's good.
Okay.
All right, Tom. So you kind of addressed this already, but do you think the team benefited by or was hindered by the constant rotation of team members?
Sarah, this was my favorite question. This is the one that really, really made me think about what you were asking, but also what happened by the way they were doing things. And I actually put awesome question, Sarah. I would answer it this way. The mission of the company, 25 aircraft, 50 pilots, 500 men, was to extract the wounded and get them to medical care. The mission of the company was greatly enhanced by the rotation, and the constant rotation, but often the team wasn't, if that makes any sense. Because you would have some very poor performers and you'd have to get rid of them. But the mission wasn't out all the time when you had those poor performers. But yet you would weed them out. All the pilots would weed them out. Sometimes the crew chiefs would weed out pilots too. They could write them up. And we had pilots that never did become aircraft commanders. So the rotation worked for the mission of the company.
So, sorry, you kind of cut out a couple of times, so I want to make sure I got all that. So that benefited the company because it kind of weeded people out and it gave visibility to all the members, or how you were saying that it benefited the company to have the constant rotation?
It did, because all of the better pilots were constantly teaching the one. That's why it was better. But once you had a really good team and you were flying with a really good team, you really hated the fact that you were coming back to the company and you were going to change to another team.
So I have a bit of a follow-up question.
Yep.
When you were in a really effective team that worked really well, you had stellar people, and then you rotated into another team that maybe had a newer pilot or a newer medic, did
Yep.
that push you that you had to kind of step up and not work harder, but be more on your game for those missions when you had more novice team members?
Absolutely, because you were always checking to make sure they were doing things right, because it was a whole team effort. And if one team member was lower in a particular skill, you still needed that skill. Landing, for example, in bad areas, doing a hoist, coming into areas and taking fire. You were flying and you would take enemy fire. You had no idea where that enemy fire was coming from. You could just hear it. And so you depended on the crew members to be looking and trying to tell you, go left, go right, they're on this side, they're on that side. Yeah, it was harder only because you had to train more.
Awesome. All right, back to you, Brian.
Okay. Tom, will you please tell us about a specific time when you had great success as a leader?
Yes. Each and every mission that we did, we went in, worked as a team to get in, to land, get the wounded on board, get the medical luck to have them alive when we got them to the hospital. That was and not every mission ended in success. We had people die on board. Get in there to get them out. When we had no gunships, that was tough. But you just did it, and if you could do that, every mission was a success that got people to the hospital that you had to extract.
Are there any follow-up questions? Are there any like stories that stick out, possibly when you were working with any of those people that you've talked about, like the better pilots that were helping train people up and getting people ready, maybe where you had to kind of step in and use your leadership skills?
Yeah, one night, it was a kind of a rainy night. In Vietnam, it was either dry or monsoon. And monsoon would rain in the morning, rain in the late afternoon, sometimes over into the night. In Vietnam, as I was one of the senior pilots, I was there maybe 10 months or so, and we had a mission that a U.S. guy was really wounded and needed extraction. It was about 2 o'clock in the morning. The clouds were very, very low, so we couldn't get high. The pilot that I was flying with, they called me in from another standby to come in and pick up this guy. I had to fly back to the company area, fuel up, and then go out to get him. I did not feel comfortable flying in that weather condition with the pilot that I was with. So I went in and I woke up my roommate who came with me to Vietnam. At that time, he was a maintenance officer, out of combat. He was a maintenance officer. I woke him up because he was a really good pilot. Said, "We're going out." So he got in the helicopter with me, and as we went out, we had to go very slow just above the road. We were actually acting like a car, and you would go so far along, and then you'd have to go up into the clouds, go over the wires, and come back down. And when you get in the clouds, a lot of times you didn't know which side was up or down, and he would be watching the ground, and then he'd take over controls. And I trusted him to do that, where I wouldn't have trusted a brand new pilot. So yeah, it was, that kind of thing. He's happy about going out. He still is angry about that. Great question.
Great story. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, you bet.
Sean, you're up.
All right. Also, something you've answered, but we'll, I guess, elaborate on a little bit. In the event of conflict or differing views on how to handle a mission, because as you said, everyone, when any team member spoke up, you listened. What team member was the authority or leader that had the final say in the tactical decision making?
Aircraft commander, and what he said was, period. Mm-hmm. So when I was a senior first pilot, not quite an aircraft commander, there were a lot of things that I disagreed with the way the aircraft commander was doing things. Mm-hmm. And I always voiced my opinion of how we should do it. He always had the total control. Same with the crew members, total control. And when I became an aircraft commander, I could do it right.
Earlier you said that as a leader, you tried to listen to your crew and
yes,
and let them voice their opinions and really contemplate their ideas, and then and you got to make your own decision. Is that a product of the culture of the military, of people that were your aircraft commanders, or is that something that you learned from a mentor or through experience decided that was the most effective way to do it? Or how did you develop that skill? I call it a skill as a leader because I think that's an amazing quality to have as a leader, because you can put your ego aside, listen to other ideas, especially people that are your subordinates, to make the better decision.
And I think that was a trial and error, quick learning curve over there. Yeah. When you were going in on every mission or coming out on every mission, you had the possibility of being shot at. And helicopters don't do well when they're hit. They bleed everywhere. They have hydraulic lines. They have all kinds of fuel. They got oil. So what you did is you really depended on all four parties to that team to get in, pick them up, and get them out. And so it's one of those things where I think the smarter, better aircraft commanders learn very quickly that if somebody's got a good idea on how we can do this, let me know.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to do exactly, I'm going to make the decision. It was never a question of decision, but it was always a good idea to ask people. I've been in here before. Asking that, for example, at night was critical. You could be coming in from the north to this little tiny village, and the crew chief says, yeah, but there's wires in front of you. You can't see them at night. So asking was always kind of smart.
Mm-hmm.
Good.
Yep.
All right, Amy?
Okay. How has past jobs influenced you to take on a leadership role?
This is a funny one. I will tell you this. At 22 years old, they gave me an aircraft, a crew of 3 other people. They told me to go out, pick up people, bring them back to the hospital, and just keep doing that for a year. My roommate and I both decided that after doing that for a year, there was nothing that we could do anymore. We could do anything. So just doing that has made me, I could be a physician if I could go through medical school, or a dentist if I'm not concerned too much about being able to master something, because I did that. It gave me all the confidence in the world. Before that, I had no confidence. Coming back from Vietnam, I knew just about everything. I found out I didn't, but I thought I did.
All right. So you've kind of already talked about the specifics of like what groups within the team had certain tasks and responsibilities, but how did you like absorb someone else if someone was unable to participate in a training mission, or like when you had newer members that didn't have the skills? I mean, you told this story about flying when there was the low fog and the not the best conditions, and how you yanked your roommate out of bed to be your co-pilot. Right. But how, if you didn't have that option, how did the team ensure like success when you didn't have the strongest members?
Okay, we would have people free every once in a while.
You'd have people.
We would have people freeze, not know what to do, just kind of be paralyzed from fear, and that's a normal thing. The crew, if it was in the back and it was the crew chief or the medic, then the other one would, kind of say, get into the game, talk them out of it. Pilots always flew together. We both had controls. You would always get on the controls with the pilot, or he would get on controls with you. So you always had this system of, don't worry, I'm here. Does that answer your question?
Sort of. I was just wondering, trying to figure out how to describe it. I guess I was thinking of, like, in my personal experience, sometimes working with like newer members that just don't quite know the ropes. Like if there was a dialogue that was, if like the crew captain or the crew chief said, all right, Tom, so, we have this person that doesn't really know how to do a hoist, so you're going to have to do these things in addition to what you normally do. Or right. Like you intrinsically knew that we have these newer people, so automatically I have to step up in certain ways.
And everybody who had on the team was always teaching somebody else something. So that crew chief and that medic were always talking and teaching, this is how you do this is how you do that, this is what I think about this is, and the pilots with the crew chiefs and the medics, everybody was just focused on only one thing. So for example, if somebody didn't know how to do something going into an area, often while you were going in, you'd be telling them, what you're looking for now is this, this, and this. Watch very closely for that. Watch out your door to the tree line, that kind of thing. So you were always instructing them what to do. And they were always telling you, that tree line, does not look good. There's activity in that tree line. Get away from that tree line. Fly over this way. Fly over that way. So it was always, because everybody was in it together. If it went down, all of you were going down.
Mm-hmm.
Does that answer your question better?
Yeah, no, that does.
Okay.
Thank you.
Back to me. Did you ever have a major failure as a team? How did you guys deal with it?
Once again, as a team, our job was pick them up alive, get them to the hospital alive, and that didn't always happen. When we had somebody die on board, it was not very often, and it was always very sad. Most of the time were drug overdoses. And crews deal with that stuff differently. Usually when a U.S. person died on board, everybody would get really kind of quiet. You'd focus on other patients that were still alive. You get to the hospitals, drop them all off, and then kind of talk about, is there anything we could have done that would have kept him alive? You know, were we late getting to the mission? Did they call us late? What was the reason that we didn't get him there? And most often it was drug overdose. And most often there's nothing we could have done to have kept him there. That was the saddest thing in Vietnam. Well, that's how they dealt with it. Some crews kind of looked at the drug overdose guy as being very stupid. You know, you dummy, you know, you could have gotten killed by the enemy. Instead, you killed yourself. So there was that too.
Interesting. Thank you for sharing.
You bet. The medics would feel particularly bad when someone died.
Yeah, it's understandable.
Okay, as a leader, did you ever have conflict during a stressful extraction mission? If so, what methods did you use to diffuse the situation to make the mission successful?
Yeah, that's a great question. That really goes to leadership. There was never conflict about the mission or the orders of the mission. There just wasn't. Here's where the guy is. Go out, pick him up, bring him to the hospital. So there was never any conflict about that. There was often discussions about the best way of doing that, especially when there was enemy contact in the area. And there was never a lengthy conversation, but the crew chief would say, for example, we were in here 2 weeks ago, and all the bad guys were to the south. We considered them bad guys, and we were good guys. Mm-hmm. Now we're all good guys. But back in those days, or the medic would say, I was here last week, and it was awful in that southwest corner. Don't go over those trees. We took fire. So there were a lot of quick comments, but there was never a conflict. And then the aircraft commander would always determine what the best method was. He would tell the crew exactly what we were going to do. He would then lead them, tell them what we were going to do. No excuses, no hesitation, going in. That was it. Aircraft commander's responsibility.
And never any friction from crew members or like final word?
You'd have somebody in the back sometimes say, I wouldn't do it that way.
But they're out of luck. That's the way
we're doing it.
Yeah.
You can get out here or
yeah.
Yeah, but very, very, very seldom. And when they did hesitate, the probability is they were just scared. Mm. That's normal. Mm. They had been in that area the week before and got shot up, for example. That's normal.
Okay.
So tell us about a time you changed a negative experience into a positive one.
This goes to business. I didn't have one from flying, but in my business practice, I had several of these. And what would happen is in the beginning of my career, I worked for insurance companies. And the insurance companies would manufacture product like life insurance, and then we would sell it. A lot of times their products were not the best products for my client. So if I was selling a term insurance policy and my company was $1 a thousand and some other company was 50 cents a thousand, then I would sell the 50 cents a thousand to my client. I did that for one insurance company and I worked for them for 9 years. I was a very good producer and made all the tables and everything, but they got mad at me because I was putting too much business outside the company. I got mad at them because they weren't manufacturing competitive product for me to sell. So they fired me. What I did is I started my own business and I became an independent distributor of lots of insurance companies' products. And now I can always say, at least for the last 30 some years, the best products for our client. It doesn't always mean it's the cheapest, but it's always the competitive one. So that was a really good question. Did I answer it, Amy?
Yes, thank you.
You bet.
All right, Tom. So you kind of touched on this before. You said that everybody was like constantly in rotation. You didn't arrive as a unit. So you joined an existing team. So was it difficult to integrate, and did you feel like a newcomer amongst like old timers?
When you first got there, yes. And then you would mature through that experience and get better and better and better. And then everybody wanted to fly with you. There were crew chiefs and medics that didn't want to fly with some pilots. Some pilots would they would fly dangerous, scare the crew. And most of the pilots and crew that were injured in Vietnam were not injured by the enemy, but by accidents. So a lot of what you're asking was you become a newbie, and then it's just like a fraternity. It's like going into college. It's like going into anything that's unknown. You first get in there, your eyes are wide open, you're asking all kinds of questions, and then pretty soon people are starting to ask you questions, and then pretty soon there's nobody to ask questions to. So that's kind of how it worked.
So then, and this is slightly related, but so when you were drafted, did you know that you were going to be a helicopter pilot, or how did they, like, obviously you said you went to like a flight school before you got to Vietnam, but how, like, what was that process like?
Okay, I will tell you, this is a comical story. You can't make this stuff up. I was living in Minnesota. I wanted to go to veterinary school. I was a 2.9 in a 3.9 world. So I moved to Minnesota because they had 60 slots for veterinary students. When I got here, they told me I couldn't be a full-time student and then qualify as a resident for the veterinary school. I had to be a resident to qualify. And if you're a full-time student, you don't become a resident, right? So I said, okay, I'll take 9 credits instead of 12. And after 1 year, then I'll be a resident, then I can go full-time, and then I can apply. They said yes. So I did that. 4 months later, I got a letter in the mail that says you're drafted. No more college deferment. So I was supposed to go to Baltimore, which is where my draft board was, and go through a pre-induction physical, which I did. They drafted me, put me on a bus. They sent me to Fort Bragg, North Carolina. For anybody that's in service, Fort Bragg, North Carolina is home of the 82nd Airborne. Yeah. I didn't want to jump out of airplanes. Doing push-ups in the snow. So they talked to all the draftees. There were 250 of us. And they kept telling us, if you want to drive a truck instead of walking the jungle, we could fix that, but you have to sign up for 1 more year. And they kept going on and on. Finally, they said, if you want to be a helicopter pilot and you pass tests, I'll put you on an airplane and send you to Fort Polk tomorrow. And I said to him, you know, I raised my hand. I said, where's Fort Polk? He said, in Louisiana. I said, well, it's not snowing in Louisiana. It was snowing in Fort Polk, Fort Bragg, North Carolina. So I took the test, and I wound up going to a different orientation and the normal combat stuff, basic training. I never planned on being a helicopter pilot. I just wanted to get out of Fort Bragg. Honest, it's true. Then they told me that you could always quit flight school. Anytime you want, you can always quit, even as a pilot, even as a crew chief or medic. If you got aircraft orders and you become afraid of flying, you can always quit. I said, wow, that's kind of neat. Send me to Texas and I'll learn how to fly a helicopter. Before I graduate, I'll quit. So I went to there, and a funny thing happened there. I was still a 2.9 student, but I was a 4.0 pilot. So I decided to go all the way through. So I went through 9 months of flight school, and then a month of medical school, and then went to Vietnam.
Okay.
So as a draftee, no, I was going to march or be 82nd Airborne. So, just good decisions along the way. I was lucky.
Okay.
Great question.
All right. So I know we've covered this a bit in your military background about how the team didn't really have conflicts. There weren't really difficult members. There were people that certain people didn't want to work with. But it doesn't seem like this question applies too much to it, but maybe in the business world as a leader, have you ever dealt with any difficult team members who didn't share the vision of the team, and what did you do in that situation?
Yeah. I've had partners. I brought in young men to come work with me. They wanted to, so yes is the answer to your question. I brought in people into our organization who didn't have the client's best interest at heart. Now, there's a fine difference between having the client win and the people win. In other words, everybody has to win. If you're selling an insurance policy, the insurance company should make money, the client should get a good deal, and the agent should get a fair commission. Those are kind of the standards for ethical business practices in the insurance business. I've had brought people in who decided they were going to sell insurance products that paid them more commission and didn't do best for the client. And, you know, as aircraft commander, if you will, I just fired them. That's how I dealt with it.
Sounds like the right approach.
Yeah, they can go work someplace else. Our company now, and my son runs it, he's been running it for 12 years, but our company has 16 employees, and every employee in that company works for the client.
Good. It sounds like you treat your outside the military business a lot like you treated your inside the military business, where the flight commander has the ultimate decision for everything they do. So
yeah, now unfortunately I'm not the aircraft commander, my son is.
I'm sure he follows your ways pretty well.
No, I follow his. Actually, he's smarter and he's excellent.
Good. Thank you.
You bet.
All right. My final question here. How often were your missions unsuccessful, and what were the most common reasons for it? You already defined unsuccessful, I guess, as if the patient died, because that was the ultimate goal. Were there any other criteria for an unsuccessful mission? Accidents, anything like that?
No, I never had an accident. I never had a crew member injured. We were hit several times, but never once did I have a crew member injured. The only thing that we considered unsuccessful is when we picked up somebody and they died en route. And that was just, we couldn't do anything about it. Sometimes there was nothing the crew could do to keep them alive. pretty well.
Lost your audio there.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I said no. The only thing that we considered unsuccessful was him dying on board.
Okay.
And sometimes you just, no matter what you did, you couldn't keep him alive,
Mm-hmm.
especially drug overdose.
You touched on that. So a lot of your extractions were from the base to the hospital, just because soldiers were doing drugs on
No, in the field.
in the field.
In the field. That's what they did at night. You know,
Hope or what? Boredom. What was the?
boredom and access. I mean, drugs were everywhere in Vietnam, and they were, you know, cheap. A bottle of vodka was $1 a quart. Cigarette,
Court?
$1 a quart. Drambuie was $2. Cigarettes were 15 cents a carton. I mean, 15 cents a pack. So when you weren't flying, you were drinking. When you weren't drinking, you were flying. That's kind of how we lived.
Yeah.
Field, they were always just one step away from enemy fire. And so a lot of them, if they weren't on guard duty or something, they were out there and they were smoking dope.
Mm.
It killed a lot of them.
Yeah. Do you still fly, Tom?
I did 2 years ago. I took lessons. I got a little kid who he couldn't have been more than 12 years old. He was my instructor. And his name was Jimmy. And Jimmy took me up. I can still fly, yes. The helicopters are too expensive to really rent.
Uh-huh.
The little ones for $200 an hour, and they're dangerous. The big ones run about $2,000 an hour, and I'm not flying those.
Yeah.
I can, and that's why I did it a couple of years ago. I wanted to see if I still could.
Like, step aside, Jimmy. Let me show you something. All right. Thanks, Tom.
Yes.
Okay. What kind of qualities do you think makes a good leader?
I think, once again, knowledge is first. Conviction, hard work, honesty, and always do what you think is right based on your perspective. That's as simple as I can be.
Okay, thank you.
You bet. Follow-ups, anybody? I mean, that was a softball. That was easy.
All right. So did different leaders, like crew leaders, or wait, so I don't have the notes there. What was the term for the guy that was in charge of like everything that was running it?
He was the aircraft commander.
Aircraft commander. So do different aircraft commanders have different leadership styles? And
Yes.
were some of those styles more or less effective? And if so, why or why not?
And that's a really good question, too. Yes, they did. The mission was always the same. Always the same. So, Sarah, are you still there?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. The styles were different, just like people in industry are different. Some people were out there flying erratic because they thought that the enemy was going to shoot them down. Other people were flying very standard and boring because they knew that the enemy wasn't going to shoot them down. Some people didn't listen. Some people did listen. Some solicited the crew. Some didn't. So there were all kinds of leadership styles, but not for the mission. The mission was the same for everybody across the board. Yeah, I think that's the only styles that there were problems on is when somebody was indecisive or not competent. And then out of 50 pilots, I would say that we had 4 the whole year I was there that were either not competent or totally indecisive. Best example I can give you, though, is we had a pilot who came over just after I got there, and he was on a mission, and they were shot down, and the aircraft exploded, and he was the only survivor. So we lost the aircraft commander. He was a brand new pilot. We lost the aircraft commander, the crew chief, and the medic. They all died in the fire. He was thrown clear of the helicopter. Nobody's really certain why. His name was Steve. And Steve was never the same again. He just couldn't focus. He was scared. He was not competent, and rightly so. I mean, you know, that's not a negative. It's just the way he responded to that tragedy. And so after about 2 months, he was just sent home.
So, but he was a pilot, right?
He was not the aircraft commander. He was the new guy in the pilot. Yes.
So with the aircraft commanders, though, were they all pretty? I mean, I know you said that their decision, they made the final call, that they didn't have.
That's right.
But were there some of them that had like different leadership styles, where they were maybe more authoritarian, or some that were more wanting to get a lot of people's input? Some
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And do you think that that it was just completely dependent on the individual whether or not those leadership styles were effective, or do you think it depended on the type of situation? Like if it was a more stressful or tense situation?
Yep. Sarah, I've seen this in the industry too, in small businesses.
Mm-hmm.
People who treat their people terrible. They're yelling at them all the time. They're telling them what to do. They're saying, do it or get out. They're very, very crude, rude, and very difficult to work with. There are other people that are really nice. They're inclusive of their employees and everything. Both businesses work. And it was the same on the helicopter. I'm sure it's the same in the cockpit of a 757 going from California to Mexico. There's all kinds of different styles, and those styles can work. The real style depends on what you want. How do you want to be? And then if you're consistent and honest and knowledgeable and all those other things, your style is going to work just fine.
Okay.
That's the way I see it after these many years in business. And I've gone through hundreds of small business owners. That was part of my career.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes. I think it's your style that's the only one that really counts. You have to be real comfortable with it. Then the team will get on board, or they'll just do what you say.
Mm-hmm. I guess that's true. Anyone else have any kind of questions that came to them during the interview, or?
No, I think Tom was very thorough in his answers, and we covered a few things multiple times. So we got lots of background on some stuff.
Anything else, Tom, that you feel like we maybe neglected to ask about, or think that you think would be valuable for us to learn or hear about from you?
Not really. What I'll do is I'll send out my notes to everybody, and then you've got your notes. You can put them together and do that individual thing. You'll, I assume, send out the link.
Mm-hmm.
Or you will. And no, it was just, thank you for the opportunity. It's kind of fun to go back and think about some of these things. And 47 years on March 17th that I left Vietnam. So it's a long time ago. I know. Okay, you don't have to say that.
Do you still keep in touch with any of the guys from your unit? Or from your company?
When I went over to Vietnam, I got on the plane and met a guy named Alan. And Alan was also going to the same duty that I was. He was a pilot. He and I went over together. We served. We were roommates together, and we returned together. He's the guy I woke up in the middle of the night and said, I need you.
Mm-hmm.
He and I meet once a year. in a different city every year. We go to the best steakhouse in town that we can find, and we celebrate life. We also go to reunions now. They're more popular. I'm taking another course. I just learned there were 2 million men in Vietnam who left Vietnam, not counting the dead, the 58,000. Of those 2 million, only 500,000 combat. And of those 2 million, 2 years ago, there's only 850,000 still alive. That's really big attrition as far as I can tell.
Yeah.
So for these reunions, we have 25 to 50 people from our company, people we used to fly with. And so I feel kind of fortunate to be able to do that. And they're crew chiefs and medics and other pilots. It's just kind of, it's an honor to be with them. They all understand.
So where's the best steak in the country then that you've been?
Well, I'll tell you, there's some great ones. There's a great one in Indianapolis. There's a great, all you have is whatever city you're going to, just Google best steakhouse and they'll come up.
What's your opinion? Which one's been the best? What's the best steak you've had?
You know what? I like the Capitol Grill. It's a chain.
Yeah, they have one here in Boston.
Yes, they do. I've been to that one in Boston. I've been to most of them. And I think Morton's is a really good restaurant too. In Minnesota here we have Manny's Steakhouse, and I like them. Atlanta's got a good one. I can't remember. It's like Bernie and Ray's or something like that. But there's a lot of good steakhouses. I've got much more traveling to do.
Cool.
Well, thank you all for interviewing me. It was a pleasure to go through all of this stuff.
Yeah, thank
That
you.
was awesome to hear it. I appreciate it.
You bet. My pleasure.
Thanks for wearing your helmet too.
You got to put it back on. I don't think Brian saw it.
Oh yeah, Brian didn't get to see.
Yeah, I'm missing out on something apparently.
When Tom logged in, he didn't have his video. He just had audio. And then when he turned his video on, you'll see what we saw.
Oh, nice. Getting in the spirit.
Yeah.
I like it.
This is our little cord that we used to plug into the helicopter. And then everybody could talk and hear.
That's cool.
That's so cool.
On next Wednesday, I'll be in Arlington National Cemetery. And they're going to do a dedication, which is unusual for Arlington, to all of the helicopter pilots and crew members that died in Vietnam. And it's actually a really neat deal. It's very unusual because in Arlington, the tombs, and so they don't have very many monuments in Arlington proper. But they're doing a big deal in the bowl by the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. Plant that thing just down the road from the tomb, and it's pretty neat. So I'm going to go to Nashville and go to Grand Ole Opry on Saturday night, and then I'm going to go to Arlington for next Wednesday, and then I'll be back.
So we'll have to schedule our meeting not on Wednesday then.
Oh, you can Wednesday. It's 4:00 in Washington. So if you have it at 6 o'clock or 8 o'clock, if you have it at, let's see, 6 p.m.
No, it's 6:30 in Washington.
Yeah, it's 6:30 now in Washington.
Yeah. You're saying it's at 4. Gotcha.
Yeah, and I'll be done with Arlington by our meeting is at 4, which is like 1 Arizona time, I think.
Gotcha. Yeah.
If you're with anything you set up, you just set it up. I'll be there.
Sweet.
I'll find a hotel or motel someplace.
You can find a Starbucks.
Oh no. Do you have Perkins?
Pardon me?
You know what Perkins is? Perkins restaurants? Oh my gosh. It's the greatest breakfast in the world. You know Denny's?
Yeah.
Well, Perkins is an upgrade.
Okay.
I think everything's an upgrade to Denny's.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Denny's, the only time I ever go to Denny's is at 2 a.m. when I'm real drunk.
You know what's interesting is everybody that I meet under 45 wants to meet at Starbucks. and everybody over 45 meets someplace else. You know, the old breakfast places and that. It's just kind of I think it's a generational thing.
Probably. Sweet. Well, do you guys want to try to set up a meeting time for next week, or do you want me to just send out an email and then we can look at schedules? I don't know if you guys want to do it while we're all on right now or what.
I think we could try to set it up right now.
Yeah.
It's easier that way.
Okay, let me grab my planner. I'll be right back.
I'll just go ahead and say this. I'm looking at my schedule right now, and the only day that I'm not working is Tuesday.
Okay.
But that doesn't mean we can't do something else. I would just be at work.
Is everybody else available Tuesday?
Tuesday night.
I'm fine with Tuesday. If
That's fine. I'm anytime on Tuesday. I'm open. So just throwing that out there, not to pressure anybody.
I work until noon out here on the East Coast, so anytime after 9 a.m. for the rest of y'all works for me.
How would Tuesday night be?
Tuesday night?
Can we stick Tuesday night
6?
Central Time?
Yeah, Tom, will you be in DC on Tuesday night?
I'm going to be in Nashville.
You'll still be in Nashville? Okay.
Yes.
So you'll be on the East Coast time.
Right. And so for me, the later, the better. Because
Okay.
I have meetings all day, Monday and Tuesday.
Okay. So if we did like our typical time, 6 p.m. for the West Coast, 9 p.m. for the East Coast, that would be good for you?
Yes.
Okay. Would that work for you, Brian?
Yeah.
6 p.m.? And then
Yep.
8, what about for you? Would that work 6 p.m. on Tuesday?
It'd be fine.
All right.
6 p.m. Arizona time, right?
6 p.m. Arizona time, 9 p.m. for you and me, Tom.
Okay, and that's Tuesday.
Yeah.
Cool.
I will make that a point of being in the hotel. One more thing that I just want to mention, because I'm still confused on this. Talked about this assignment 5.3 team discussion,
Uh-huh.
interview analysis. And I'm looking, if you're using a live format for your team discussion, we thought it was just posting this video, right?
Well, no. So remember when the professor was on at the beginning of this? So we'll have to do our own synopsis just like we do every week. So I'll say what my portion was. You'll talk about how you were the one that was interviewed. So that will be the synopsis about our personal contributions to the interview. And then we also do our assessment, how effective we thought the interview was. And that's based off of that chapter 11 link that she emailed yesterday.
Okay.
And that can all be on one discussion, right? We can just break it up 2 separate sections.
So that we're going to do in our team discussion board. And then I'll upload this video to YouTube tonight and email the link to all of us. And then Sean will just have to submit that link.
I just submit a link onto that section, right? And that should be
you
it.
have to actually upload it just like you did with the team charter. So you can do a Word document with the, like, all it has to have in it is the link to YouTube. And you
Okay,
can,
so a Word document uploaded with the link on it.
yeah, it just has to have the link. You don't have to have any written thing. But it has to be a Word document so you can upload it into that assignment.
Okay, that's easy though. I can do it. That's
Yeah,
no
and
problem.
that's the 100-point team portion. And then our discussion board post is how she will determine if we get the full 100 points.
And are those 3 things, I guess 3 items, they're all due on Sunday, by Sunday?
Yes.
Okay.
So the team, so I'll get that link to you so you can do that.
I'll upload that immediately as soon as you get it to me. I'll get
Yeah,
that figured
it'll
out.
take a while. The last couple times it takes like almost an hour to upload just the MP3 and then about another hour to convert it onto YouTube. So I'll get it to you though tonight or tomorrow, and then you can do the team portion. But then the rest of us, we just have to do the discussion board. So the synopsis of our individual contributions, and then our assessment for how we thought the interview went. And that can be in one discussion post if you would like.
Okay, but let me ask one more time, because what I'm reading is assignment 5.3, team discussion, interview analysis.
Yes.
Yeah.
It says, this is the link to the discussion forum for Unit 5 for each team to conduct post-interview discussion.
So that's where Sean is going to post the actual Word document with the YouTube. But if you look down at the bottom, where is it?
If you are using a live format for your team,
If you go above it, above quizzes, there's the thing in red that says instructions for after the meeting. And so you have to submit your summary about what we did. And
understood.
then you also have to do an assessment of how we think I can't find it now.
The assessment?
Yeah, where the assessment stuff is, right below, right?
That's the very last thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's very last. It says, if you are using live format for your team discussion, you should cover the same issue topics as are outlined above. Record the session and post it in YouTube, just as you've been doing for the other discussions. Add meeting summary from both the interview and from the interview assessment meeting.
This might be one of those things that she wrote after she hit her head.
Yeah, this might be the part that doesn't make sense.
Right. See, I think there's an individual deal, and then I think there's a team assessment.
So I thought that the assessment, though, my understanding was that the assessment we do individually, because I think now I can't find it.
If you look at that paragraph above what you're reading, Tom, it implies all of it sounds like it's part of the post-interview assessment for each person. It doesn't say anything about doing anything in the team other than that one sentence that you're reading.
Yeah, so I think that one, like, maybe ignore that bit, because what it says above, like Brian pointed out, is what we're using chapter 11. And so our impressions, what went right, what went wrong, what did we learn?
Okay, one second. If I go to the grade deal and look at our grades,
does somebody want to just email the teacher and see if she can clarify?
right. See, when I go to group discussion, I go to group homepage, then there's group tools, there's a group discussion board, group task, but there's also Unit 4, Teams Interview Plans.
That was the thing we turned in last week.
And Teams Interview Link under 5.
Yeah.
That's a 5.3. No?
Yeah, but so the link is what Sean's going to submit. And it says, I'll find it, but it says somewhere in the instructions for the week that for that, all that Sean needs to do is have a Word document with the link to the YouTube video. Because
Okay.
it's an assignment like the charter where it has to be in a Word document. So all that has to be in that document is the link so that she can watch the YouTube video. And that's the team portion, because the team portion of the assignment was this interview right now that we had. And so rather than submitting like a lengthy document with the notes, we can just submit the YouTube video itself.
Okay.
I'm off tomorrow. I don't work tomorrow, so I can reach out to her either after we finish this up just to clarify, and when I send the link to all of us with the YouTube video, I can have whatever she says. I'll reach out to her and just make sure that we're not missing something.
I think that's a really good idea, because I know we have to do the individual one. I know that we have to submit the link. But it looks to me like we have to also do a team discussion.
Well, if that's the case, do we need to schedule another meeting before Sunday to discuss an assessment, or how?
Or we can do it on Google Doc.
But why don't I reach out to her and then we can figure out that before we get too carried away planning for something that
Yep.
I'm pretty sure that we don't. I'm pretty sure that what we were talking about is what we need to do. And then, but if we need to plan another quick meeting to kind of do an assessment, we can do that
Absolutely.
Sunday.
Once again, I'll be in meetings Sunday afternoon, but the nights, if it's 9 o'clock meetings, I'll make it. If they've got meetings, I can cut it. I'll just won't go.
Well, and we can figure that out.
I can make it.
I have a bunch of law school stuff this weekend, so.
Ooh, okay.
Okay, but yeah, I'll reach out to the professor and make sure that we're not missing anything.
Very good, Sarah. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. So then, and then I'll send, once we close out this, I'll send the invite for next Tuesday at 6 p.m. West Coast, 9 p.m. East Coast.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah. Anything
Thank
else?
you, everybody.
All right. Have fun at the Grand Ole Opry, Tom.
Yeah, thank you. I've never been there. It should be fun.
Who's playing there?
I have no idea. No idea. I think it's about 4 months ago when I found out the seminar was going to be down there. So I just got the best seats I could for Saturday night. That was it.
Fun.
Sweet.
I'll let you know.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, guys.
Good night.
All right, everybody. Have a good one.